Here we go. All right, let's go back. Here we have to the commandment of counting the Omer. So let's see how much of this we can get done. These are the commandments to the Kohanim. And now we have here. Here we are. Here it is. These are the holidays. And now it says, oh, Usfartem lachem. It says, you should count for you from the day after Shabbat, which that means the day after Passover, Miyom Aviyachem at the Omer, from the day that you bring the Omer, 7 complete weeks. 7 complete weeks. We have a beautiful Ramban over here, but let's just do the Orach Chaim. You should count lachem. We did this actually yesterday. Why does it say you should count lachem for you? Why for you? So that if you remember, the Orach Chaim says, because the Jews just got out of Egypt and they have to purify themselves. So it's you're counting, you're making shine you to you. So they have to count the days and purify themselves. It says the reason why you have to do it is in order to purify yourself from the day after Shabbat. Here it says, you have to 7 complete weeks. So it says from the day after Shabbat. It doesn't say on Shabbat itself, in other words, the holiday, but it's talking about this counting that you do. It has to be complete. So in other words, you don't do it on the holiday, you do it immediately after the holiday, as soon as the new day begins, so that the days will be complete days, 49 complete days. So if, let's say, the Shabbat falls on the 15th of Nisan, if it happens to be the 15th of Nisan can fall, it says it can't fall on what? On Monday and Wednesday, Badu. It can't fall on Wednesday and I'm sorry, it can't fall on Monday and Wednesday and Friday. It can't Badu in Badu Pesach, it says. So it says, but if Pesach falls on Shabbat, then the days will be pure, will be complete. He said, but this whole commandment that they got, they were still in Egypt. Therefore, God commanded that they should count the day after. Now, when they were in on the 15th, that was when they were sacrificing, they were eating their Korban Pesach on that night, on the 15th. The Korban Pesach was sacrificed on the 14th, but they ate it on the 15th. So they couldn't start counting on the 15th because they were still in Egypt then. So when did they start counting the first time? They counted the days that they got to Mount Sinai. After that, they didn't count anymore when they were in the desert, because the commandment is to count from the days when you bring the Omer. And that was only when they come to the land of Israel they could count. And that's why it says over here, when you come to the land, it says, here, the Baal Ben Israel say, when you come to the land of Israel that I'm giving you, and you take your first crops, you should bring this Omer, this measurement of barley, the first. So in other words, the commandment really only actually began when they came into the land of Israel. But the first time they counted it was they're counting the days from going out of Egypt until they received the Torah. That was the first time. And then for the other 39 years that they wandered in the desert, they didn't count it. But nevertheless, there still is a remembrance of this, that you have to count 49 full days of freedom from Egypt. And when, if they would start counting when they were in Egypt, it wouldn't have been days of freedom because they were still in Egypt on the day of Passover. So they have to count the day after Passover. That's what we saw. Shalom. Here we go. All right, so that's what the sentence says. Oh. So you have to sacrifice this Omer offering. It says you have to count the days. What does it mean, safartem? Like it said, the rabbis say, neshamot, am b'nei Yisrael, that the souls of the Jewish people, they are like the two tablets that God gave on Mount Sinai. And by the means of, what does it mean? By means of counting them, they shine. Kenisparnios et atzmam. They shine. In other words, the uniqueness, the specialness of each and every one comes out. So each and every Jew counts the days, and the days, each day becomes a special day. And you're supposed to do from the day after Shabbat. What does it mean? From now, before they come into the land of Israel, from the day after Shabbat, Keneged Achar Biasam Le'eretz, this corresponds to when they come into the land of Israel. So that's what it says, from the day they bring the Omer. In other words, they have to count twice. First of all, when they come out of Egypt, and then again, when they come into the land of Israel, they begin counting again when they bring the first offering of barley. Therefore, it says, first of all, the day after Shabbat, because this is a commandment that they have to do previously. Masha Enkin, which is not the case when they come into the land of Israel. This is after they arrive into the land of Israel. So it's two times. That's what he wants to say. The commandment is after Pesach, you do it once, and then you have to do Miom Heviachem. Then after that, you have to, when you come in to the land of Israel. So here you have an interesting thing. Here it says, count the Omer, and then all of a sudden you have over here an interesting thing. Uvakutz et ketziratachem. Oh, suddenly after this commandment that says, and when you harvest your fields, don't harvest them totally. Leave the corners, the peah of of your fields, and also whatever falls down, leket kitzircha, don't gather it up. Leave it for the poor people and for the converts or the non-Jews that live according to the 7 Noahide commandments in the land of Israel. Leave that. I am God. What's this got to do with counting the Omer? It says, and also when you cut your fields, right, leave the corners of it. Here we're talking about the Omer. So he says, what does this commandment really got to do with the Omer? It's a commandment that could be mentioned anywhere in the Torah when you're harvesting. So it says, what is it? Maybe we can say like this. It's coming to tell you that your field that you bring from it to Omer, that the field also has to participate. The ground in Israel also has to participate in this commandment. Shetavo hasvor al Omer, because logically you could say that since you began to cut your produce from the fields in Israel, and you brought the first produce as a sacrifice to God, that's this Omer. So a person might think, okay, I've already done my part. I brought my part to God, right? And then that's it. For this, at least this one harvest, I don't have to bring anything to God because I already gave the first fruits to God when I made this Omer offering. That's what the Torah says. No, that you have to still leave the corners. Therefore, you have to find that this is only mentioned, these two commandments, leket and peah. Leket and peah. Peah is that you have to, the harvester has to leave the corners, and all those sheaths that fall down, he has to leave them there. He's not supposed to go back and pick them up. that these are things that from the person. Below Soviet emtsai, below huskar shichacha, and he's not mentioning this thing about shichacha, what you forgot, the sheaths. If you forget, like bundles in the field, that this comes from the person. So it says when you're harvesting intentionally, when you're harvesting the land, so it says you should leave some of it standing. In other words, you didn't cut it. You didn't cut it. These things, and those things that you little things that you unintentionally left behind, those you have to leave. But you're supposed to, right, not go back and gather large amounts that you left. This depends on the person. So the Torah is telling us, this is taught us in Torah's Kahanim, that God is giving us a hint over here that he gave leket and shikha and peah, a person that gives these things to the poor people. It's as though the holy temple was existing and he was sacrificing sacrifices. In other words, even after the temple didn't exist and they were giving in their fields, they were like the 440 years before the temple was built, and leaving the corners, and even afterwards, it's as though right after the temple was destroyed, people live in the land of Israel and they leave the corners of the field for the poor. I don't really know if people do this commandment now. I have to ask some farmers if they still do. I think people just give charity. But in any case, if you do leave it, even when there is no temple, it's as though you brought sacrifices to the temple. That what it says, shikha, you should forget, even though that it's not mentioned in the sentence. What does it say over here? It says leket. I'm sorry. Here, sentences over here. You have to leave the peah and the leket. And it doesn't say shichacha. Shichacha is if you leave a bigger bundle that you're supposed to leave it there. Why doesn't it mention that? It says the Or HaChaim Kadosh, because because it's included in these other two, so it's automatically implied. And the Torah, the reason that it doesn't write it is because lo katav la'arich shenitkaven gam kein laderech shekatavdi. Because he's writing in general the fields the things that you leave behind in your field, if you leave them for the poor people, as though you brought an offering in the holy temple. That's because, so therefore it makes this sentence in the Omer offering, part of the Omer offering, even though it really hasn't got anything to do with it. So this is part. Let's do the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar, until the day after Shabbat, you should bring it, count 50 days. Okay, Kli Yakar says, this is a sign for the giving of the Torah, because the Torah has to be new. Mincha chadasha. The Torah has to be brand new by a person all the time. Every day, as though today he received the Torah. So that's what it says over here. Al machrat Shabbat mikro ha'ikravtem mincha chadasha. It should be a new offering. So what's he saying? When they left Egypt, they started to count. They counted 50 days until they received the Torah, and that was like a mincha chadasha. It was a new offering. So that's the whole idea. The Torah is supposed to be new in your eyes all the time. What does it mean new? God is giving it to you right now. This is God's will right now. That what it doesn't say in the Torah clearly that this day is Matan Torah. And also the same thing, another thing, Rosh Hashanah is not mentioned clearly in the Torah. It doesn't say, it says that this day is a holiday, and it doesn't say Rosh Hashanah, it is Rosh, and it doesn't say that this is the day that man was created and things, and what we're celebrating. It just says that it's a holiday. But Rishon the Tishrei, the first day of the seventh month, it says, first day of the seventh month. So interestingly enough, it doesn't call the name, right, the holiday of Shavuot. It doesn't say that it's the day that the Torah was given. Very important. And also the same thing with Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't say that we're commemorating the creation of the world, more exactly the creation of man. So why not? The reason for both of them is because, like I wrote in my book, Olot Ephraim, his name was Shlomo Ephraim Lukshitz. That was the name of the Kli Yakar. That on Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, God didn't want to limit a special day. Say, this is the day when you have to remember the Torah was given. Why? Because a person has to be every day similar to him, every day of the year, as though that day he received the Torah. Because in fact, Omer Azal, the rabbis say that the Torah is something like dot. It's like the breast, a mother's breasts. All the time that the child wants milk, as it puts out more milk. And it says it's always a new taste to the child. Kacha Torah, also the Torah. Right? It's very interesting. A child, you give a child honey, you give him sweet stuff, he doesn't want it. For some reason, his mother's, that's why they have these things that they simulate it, the taste of the mother's milk. But for a child, it's always healthy, it's tasty. Also the same thing as the Torah. This is the Torah, call a hoga, bo, a person that learns in the Torah all the time, as every day he'll find a new reason, new ideas. Therefore, it's a law that it should be similar, it's a dinu, it should be, that every day the Torah should be brand new, as though you received it today. Therefore, every day is the giving of the Torah. To whom? To those people who learn the Torah all the time. Therefore, it's not right to have a special day, and even though we do have the day when the Torah was given, but it doesn't want to say in the Torah, this is the day the Torah was given. Because then you think, okay, if I think about this one day, it's good enough. You're supposed to think every day the Torah is being given. Therefore, it says the words of Torah should be brand new to you all the time, and not like an old letter. Shalibo shaladam ketzbo, that a person reads it over and over again, like an old newspaper. Shahari be'emes ata motzebo davar chidush, because you find something brand new in the Torah every day, because the Torah really does come from God. Therefore, ein yom netinatam muvu'er b'Torah. Therefore, the day that it was given is not stated in the Torah. It doesn't call this is the day of the giving of the Torah. It says it's a holiday of Shavuot. It just is hinted at when it says Mincha Chadasha. It's just hinted at what it says over here, that you bring a new offering. This is to indicate that the Torah is like a new offering. It's a Mincha Chadasha, something brand new every day. What about Rosh Hashanah? And that's the reason also why Rosh Hashanah is not mentioned clearly in the Torah. It says you should celebrate the first day of Tishrei. The first day of the 7th month is a holiday, but it doesn't say that it's Rosh Hashanah. Why isn't it mentioned by name? In order that a person shouldn't go in the rest. What is the day of Rosh Hashanah? The day when we coronate God. We make God a king. That's what it's supposed to be. That's all our prayers. And it says so that a person won't think that, okay, one day of the year I'm going to make God a king, and the rest of the day I'll do what I want to. And he'll do all sorts of sins all the days of the year, and then he'll think, Rosh Hashanah comes along, the day when we coronate God, I'll fix it up then. Biosa korov liyom asher bo yashav al kiseh, until we come to the day of God, when God sits on his throne and he judges everyone. So therefore, it says in the Torah clearly, this is the day of judgment. But what? A person should imagine that every single day God is judging the whole entire world, and it's written down. He checks over his ledgers, his books, to see that every single day a person should do tshuva. And so it is, so it is according to the one that says that man is judged every single day. That's the one opinion in Rosh Hashanah. Like it says, Bikadnu lebakarim tifkadenu lebakarim uleregaim tifchenu. It says, it's brought down also in another book that there's another opinion that says that God judges a person every single second. There was one of the Amorim that he would pray for his food. If his food was sitting right in front of him, he would pray to God for his food, because every single second is brand new. In my book, he said, I spoke about this in great length. So here we learn just a little bit of the commentaries of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh and the Kli Yakar on this commandment of counting the Omer. The Orach Chaim says counting the Omer is for you. It's in order to fix you up from the impurities of Egypt. And therefore, every day they would count in order to come closer and closer to, and also the same thing is to sanctify the land that you brought the offering. And the Kli Yakar said that the reason that it's not mentioned clearly that this is the day of giving of the Torah is because the Torah is supposed to be brand new in your eyes all the time. So the Torah doesn't specify that this is the day when the Torah was given. Doesn't, even though the fact is that is the day the Torah was given. Okay, good. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll learn some Pirkei Avot. We went over all the commandments in this week's Torah portion. So tomorrow we'll go back to learning some of the Pirkei Avot, and of course we'll also do the Haftorah. Tomorrow we'll also learn in the morning at 3:00. We'll also have a class, but the class will come from Miron. Rabbi Shimon I'll be up there in Miron, broadcasting to you, wonderful participants. Have a good day with Mashiach now.